Good evening. Welcome to our final session, session number 6 of our 6-part Taharas Hamishpacha review series. We made it. We're at the last one. We hope that you'll all enjoy the evening. Everybody, please turn off your cell phones. No recording. Again, we are recording each session with the assistance of JLI Torah Cafe. Each session will be available for viewing directly on mikveh.org. Sessions 1 and 2 are already posted. Sessions 3 and 4, we hope Emet Hashem to be posted, I hope by the end of this week. And the other 2 will follow shortly after, as soon as all technical things have been done that will enable us to post it for your viewing. Please enjoy the session. Tonight is on Harchokos, keeping the distance. And I will now introduce Mrs. Rezel Shmueli, our chair lady for the evening. Thank you.
Hello again. And we welcome our internet audience as well as all of us here together. Good evening. We've traveled far in these sessions. We've learned that Taharas Hamishpacha is Torah, it's Doraisa, and we grow beyond our expectations and beyond our limits because it is Torah. We learned a lot about ourselves. We learned about our own birth, our own growth, our strengthening of character. We grew in our confidence. We learned to trust ourselves because it is only Hashem and ourselves who are witnesses to the bedikas. So we women have a very unique and special relationship with the Rebbe Rashab himself. We have yichus. And through marriage, we learned that it's a biyin adayad, and we're able to tap into a level called adayad, which is the everlasting. That's the Rebbe Rashab himself. So now, we're growing, we're doing great. And all of a sudden we have Harchokos. Where is the growth in Harchokah? What's happening? Do you see the advantage to yourself? Do you feel anything when you keep the Harchokah? And we're human. We're built to need the touch. So what is the secret of Harchokos? What is the gift that Hashem gave us through these Harchokos? The Harchokos is in Isra De'oraisa. There's a pasuk in Vayikra that says, if you want to look it up, it's Parak Yud Ches, pasuk Yud Tes. It says, Bel Isha b'nidas tum asa loisi krav. A woman when she's not tahar, loisi krav, don't get close. And there's a klal in Torah that whenever it's talking about kiruv in relationships, it's talking about nishika, kissing, and chibuk, and hugging. So this is an Isra De'oraisa. And all the other Harchokos, all the other Isurim, are from the Derabanan. And the Alter Rebbe in Tanya mentions and discusses that the Isur of the Derabanan, in some cases, are even more stringent than Isur De'oraisa. To understand Harchokos, we have to understand the mitzvah aseh and mitzvah lo aseh. Before Matan Torah, the person who did the mitzvah, we call him the gavra. The person who does the action of the mitzvah, he grew in stature, he grew in kedusha. He improved. His neshama grew. But the object with which he did the mitzvah, nothing happened to it. It stayed the same. There was no change. But after Matan Torah, the person who did the mitzvah grew, but Hashem put a power that the chayfetz itself, the chefza, the object, developed a sensitivity and was able to absorb the kedusha. So the character of the object, the mohus of the object changed. There was the ability to be a transformation. And that happened through Matan Torah. Now, a mitzvah lo saseh is on a much higher madrega than mitzvah aseh. So now, when we're keeping the Harchokah, I, the woman, who's observing it, I'm the gavra. I'm the one that's doing the action. And my husband is the chefza, is the object. He's receiving this action. So now, by observing this lo saseh, I'm growing, and at the same time, my husband is growing because he's receiver of that action. And at the same time, again, he's also keeping the Harchokah. So he's growing, and I'm the chefza, I'm the object, I'm growing. So there's a change in both of us. a positive change, a good change. It's like we created a protective bubble about us that's filled with Kedusha. It's 4 times the action. I to him, he to me. And in Kedusha, there are no numbers because it's limitless, as we mentioned initially. So there's a lot happening by keeping the Harchokos. There's a lot of good coming out for us. So now that we know this, by observing the Harchokos, we're growing. Now we're human and we're weak, and that's part of strengthening our characters. And there's nothing wrong in having a difficulty with this, but when you think what's happening, then it's different. And there's nothing wrong in approaching your husband or he you and admitting the fact that it is hard and that we need help. And if we're slipping, one helps the other. There's teamwork in this. This is what marriage is all about. When there are hurdles, we work together to overcome it, and that's what makes the relationship. That's what makes a couple unique for themselves, by working this out. And through the years, as we keep doing this, we become an unbeatable couple. I just want to remind you that before we start the questions and answer session, I'm going to take a moment again, like we usually do, to have everyone say quietly to themselves a bracha that we're going to ask for ourselves and for the klal, because this is a time of learning Torah, and it's mentioned that when we get together and learn Torah, we can accomplish much more than Malch Michal can do, and we want to take advantage of that. So start thinking now, those that are on the internet audience, you jot down names of people. If you want bracha v'hatzlacha in your shlichus or whatever you think you need, we'll stop and we'll ask. We won't ask, we'll order. Sister Raza, please.
Yeah, fine. Hi, good evening, everybody. And today we'll discuss the Dinei Harchaka, which is the laws how to stay in touch without touching. When do these dinim apply? Of course, as soon as you become nida, for whatever reason, you could review that in the first lesson, they apply. Sometimes you're not sure if you're nida. You found something on your toilet paper, or something happened, you're not sure. Already, if you're not sure, all these rules apply. And when you ascertain with the Rav what your status is, if you were nida, then you are keeping it from the first minute. And if you're not, then they don't apply anymore. So too, if it happened once that when you came back from the mikvah, you weren't sure if you have a chatzitza, you have to toivel again, all those rules will apply until you ascertain that your status is in fact tahira. And once you tell your husband that you're tahar, then the Dinei Harchaka do not apply anymore. Yom Kippur, because relations are forbidden, we keep the Dinei Harchaka. Tisha B'Av, relations are forbidden, not d'oraisa, d'Rabbanan. So the night of Tisha B'Av, we keep the Dinei Harchaka. And during the day, there's no hugging and kissing. And the minig is to be machmir from touching as well. This is what Rabbi Chaikin told me today. If your Rav says something different, you could ascertain with your Rav. Also, if God forbid, one of the couple is sitting shiva, when relations are forbidden, there's no hugging, no kissing, and no sharing the bed. And if something else applies for you, you be in touch with your own Rav. Thank you. Now, I just want to say something very clearly. If somebody's life is in danger, if there's pikuach nefesh, yes, your husband can grab you, can save you, and you to him, there's not a shayla at all. If the husband or the wife is ill, chas v'sholem, and needs assistance, call your Rav to find out what you may do and how you may do it for each other. There may be certain stringencies that the husband, it will be more strict what the husband can do for you, because after all, if you're sick and he's strong and he's taking care of you, that's very different than if he's sick and he's incapable of doing anything anyways. There may be more things that you may be allowed to do for him. Sometimes you may be required to ask somebody else for assistance, depending what it is. So I wish on all of us that no husband should ever be sick and no wife should ever be sick, so you won't even have to come to the shaila. Now, this is not under the Dinei Harchokos, but because it's something that's mentioned in Sfarim in this chapter, when a woman has her period during your actual flow, it's customary that women, it's not halacha, but it's the custom that we keep, that women do not go to a cemetery. If you need to go to the oil at this time, there are differences of opinion. Rabbi Chaikin said it's better to avoid going if you can. If you need to, that's the time that you're coming to New York, or it's another special reason, then you try to stay at the door, like inside the room of the candles, at the door, and not actually go inside the room where the oil is. And just to put in your pan, if you could pass it on to someone else without undue attention, that's the better way. But if you need to put it in yourself because you don't want to make a scene out of it, you could put the pan and step back out. That was his suggestion. If you are doing something else, you could ask your Rav about it. So too, we don't look at the open parchment when the Sefer Torah is lifted by Hagba Kriyas Torah. The source of these halachis are, like Mr. Shmueli mentioned, the pasuk says, "Vel isha benidas tumasa loy sikrav legalis erva." It's a isra goysa say da'iraisa, which means it's a biblical prohibition. It's not something not nice to do. Hugging and kissing, affectionate touch is a isra goysa say da'iraisa. You don't do it by accident, okay? Now, because any other male-female relationship, if they're forbidden to have intimate relations with each other, they're forbidden to be alone, except for the relatives, like parents and children, grandparents and grandchildren, brothers and sisters. There's an exception to the rule. But any other male-female combination, they're forbidden to be alone together. Because husband and wife are forbidden to each other, when she is nida, forbidden to have intimate relations, but they are living alone together and they're sharing the same bedroom together, and that's our way of life. So we have an added stringencies to keep the proper distance. Why? Why do we have these added stringencies? Of course, halachically, because the isser having relations when a woman is nida is isser kares. It's a very grave transgression. We want to take the extra precautions to make sure that doesn't happen. And if a couple will say, we know ourselves, we know our limits, some of these dinei harchaka, we know if we do it together, it won't cause us anything, it won't lead us to any sin. If he sees my elbow, if he sees my neck, if I hand him a pencil, if he pours me a drink and I'm watching, our heart isn't going to melt. We're not going to fall over each other. We know each other. We don't need these added measures that the Chachamim saw important to put into place. So number one, I want to tell you, there's a rule in Torah, ein apotropos la'arayos. Nobody is above it. No human being could come and say, I'm in full control. Okay? I know my body. I'm above it. I don't need rules. I can stop myself. I can start myself. I know what I'm doing. Just like there's a rule in Torah, Esav hates Yaakov. There's a rule in Torah, nobody's above it. You could have a lange weisse board, and you could, be on Yom Kippur, in Shul, Mincha, by Kriyas Torah, you also have to hear when you feel and you're acting like a malach, and you already said vidui a number of times. What's the Kriyas Torah by Mincha Yom Kippur? On Yom Kippur, on Yom Kippur on Mincha? It's all about maintaining the proper distance and staying away from forbidden relationships. So Torah says nobody's above it. The Eibishter knows that nobody's above it. Now, if you feel you are above it, then is this something good? And this is what I want everybody to understand in a little nutshell, and this is the Rebbe's message. The Rebbe's message is when you're close, when you should be distant, you'll be distant when you should be close. Meaning the Eibishter gave us the greatest gift, that we could be in tune to every little pleasure, every little nuance of every sensation between the male-female relationship in all the five senses. And if we're in tune to every little stimulation that could be, whatever it says, Hashem says to stay away from at the time that we're nida, it means those little actions, we may think they're nothing, but they can and do create these little sensations that keep us very fine-tuned to every little millimeter or milliounce, I don't know how you measure that, of any pleasurable sensation of the male-female relationship. And if someone comes along and says, oh, for me that's meaningless, we don't feel anything from that, it doesn't turn my husband on, it doesn't make him feel anything special. In fact, he's saying, I'm sitting in the rose garden, but I can't smell the roses. Are you going to say, wow, it's amazing, he's in a rose garden and he can't smell? You're going to say, wow, it's such a pity because Hashem gave us something so beautiful as roses to be able to enjoy that pleasure in Olam Hazeh. And if he can't smell the roses because his nose is stuffed, I wish he could unstuff his nose so he can achieve even more pleasure in Olam Hazeh and enjoy the greatest gifts that the Eibishter gives us. So if we maintain all the little details, we are sensitive to the maximum romantic feelings and the maximum pleasure within the male-female relationship. Now what happens is, if a couple will say, okay, we're desensitized to this, we're desensitized to that, touch, we're desensitized, sound, taste, smell, sight, we're desensitized to, obviously, at the time that we're supposed to appreciate the full-blown romance and our senses aren't working as well because we're desensitized, of course we're going to want to compensate. What couple doesn't want to achieve maximum pleasure? But when we compensate and we find ways to achieve the pleasure that we should be achieving, we have to compensate. The way we compensate would compromise on either our dignity, especially the female dignity, that your body turns more into something important than your total being, or the Kedusha is compromised. That means there's a way to husband and wife to express their physical love in an edel way, in a refined way, in a tzniyazdika way. And of course, the other ways that are okay, they're allowed, but you can't say they're the ultimate in the most refined setting. And if we're not tuned in to all those sensations, we're going to have to lower our standard and resort to, of course, everything is only permitted. We're not chas v'shalom talking about something that's forbidden. But even in what's permitted, it won't work in the way that is in the most refined, edel, and kedushadik way. And as we started our classes in the beginning, it's a package deal. Because in Yekadish Atzma, it's that kedushadik atmosphere, the extra measure of kedusha in the way we keep Taharas Hamishpacha, and the edel kedushadik way, how we express our love in a physical sense. That extra measure is what produces that extra edelkeit in our children. So the gift and the challenge is to trust the Eibishter and keep these dinim to the T. And then you can fine-tune your senses and become very sensitive to even the most little sensations. So the outpouring of that romantic time is sensational within the setting of Kedusha. We're going to learn a lot of no's. And like Mr. Shmueli began to say, that the no's in some way produce an even deeper Kedusha than the yeses. Mr. Goysa say draws down a higher level of Kedusha. You cook in Shabbos Parshas Yisrei Tavshin and Aleph. There's a beautiful sikha about Mrs. Asay, Mrs. Goysa say, a higher level of Kedusha. But with the no's, we have to concentrate what's really going on over here. Because it's a time, when we talk about romance, romance is an outpouring of deep amorous feelings, deep sentimental feelings of great love. Where do they come pouring out from? They have to be created. How are they created? So there's a ladder. There's certain feelings and certain actions that build and create those feelings of love. And we're going to go through the ABC now very quickly. I like to do this with my students because you have to understand I'm going to follow that with all the no's because we want to remove any physical sensations that create some sort of excitement. And instead, we have to do the hard work ourselves. And we have to think, how can I show my husband appreciation? With an action or with words that are permitted during this time. And the extra thought that it takes to create that action and the thoughtfulness and the care and the concern that it takes to express it with words, that's really building the relationship. So when you come back from the mikvah, it's the feelings that are expressed by the kiss. Not that the kiss create the feeling, but the feelings are so deep and they come out in a gush and they're expressed in real physical affection. So I want the audience to help me, please. And I want you to be quick because the shir is going to be as short as possible because the other ones are way, way long. So we're going to go from A to Z and just tell me. A, we said appreciation. We're talking about the building blocks of love. A, We're not love, romance, intimacy, that's when you're tahar. Now think, how can you build your relationship when you're nida? We'll give you a whole long list, and hopefully you'll be nida only the minimum 12 days, then chas v'shalom not a day longer than that, only for healthy reasons like having a baby and so on and so forth. So A, appreciation. B, we'll say bonding, or that's R. C, good. She wants it done already. C, let's go. Care, concern, compassion, consideration, considerate. D, the devoted wife. E, encouragement, empathy, put an effort. F, forgiving. G, generous, good-heartedness, gracious, gentle. H, happy, we always are happy. Humor, but not flirtatious. Helpful, not all husbands like help. I hope the husbands that are listening, are you going to forgive me? Integrity, they said integrity. I did this with some students recently. Interesting conversations, intellectual conversations. J, judging for the good. K, kindness. L, loyal, a listening ear, learning together. M, meaningful conversations, midos tovos, especially when you have your period. N, nice, nurturing. O, overlook. P, pleasant conversations, pay attention to the details, be patient. Q, keep quiet and let him finish the sentence and the paragraph. Q, quarrel-free. R, respect, responsible, resourceful. How do you open up your gown if he can't help you? Reassurance. S, supportive, sharing, soft, sensitive, sincere. T, trust, thoughtful, tactful, thankful. U, understanding, unwind. V, validate, value, venture to do good. This is just for my recent students. You can make a different nusach. W, willing. X, extra, whatever you have to work extra on together, like Mr. Shmueli mentioned. Support each other to take extra care to keep it properly. Y, yielding, yearning. I'm chalishing already. Can't say it with words, but inside you're chalishing. And Z, they wrote zoom in or zoom out, depending on what you need to do. Zis. And I say zitzfleisch, hang in there. We're almost going to the mikvah. Yay, thank you, students. Great job. Okay, so now that we got the yeses, now we're going to get to the no's. So, before we get to the five senses, because Loisikravu involves pleasure with the five senses, Loisikrav, compliments. Of course, we are talking to each other. We take care of each other's needs. Compliments are important. Now, you have to be careful with the compliments that you don't say in private what you would say. You don't say in private what you wouldn't say in public. If you don't know the difference between private and public, which is a problem today, so as a rule of thumb, if you take care to compliment the action rather than the person, you're usually okay. Okay, you can practice that in your head. Gift giving. Okay, if your husband always buys flowers for Shabbos, he's buying flowers for Shabbos. Other types of gift giving, especially if they have romantic or intimate connotations, sometimes it's best to leave it for when you come home for the mikvah. You also have to be practical. If your anniversary is today and he's presenting you a gift, just picture the scene. But if you wait a couple days later, it just might make more sense. So there are some, here there's room, and there's something you discuss with your Rav about how to go about it. Surely, if he never buys you flowers, and now he wants to do something really special and buy you flowers, that would be inappropriate. But let's say you had a very hard, you were trying to get pregnant and it didn't work, or you had some other, very negative thing that happened, and he's buying you flowers, not for anything romantic, he just wants to be a mensch and just make you feel human, that would be a little different. So when it comes to gift giving, you have to discuss this with a Rav. No discussions of intimacy is allowed. Not the practical end of it, not the halachic end of it, not the hashkafic end of it. Yes, you may study together the dinim of Taharas Hamishpacha up to Tvila and up to when the woman toiveled. All the discussion of what happens after Tvila during the Tahar time, that's left for when you are Tahar. Torah study is encouraged between husband and wife when you're Nida and when you're Tahar. The Rebbe mentioned that Torah is a school for Shalom Bayis. Torah brings together two opposites, Guf and Neshama, Gashmis and Ruchnius, Shemaim and Aretz. So learning together, have a shir together, and that's okay when you're Nida. Now for the 5 stances. Touch. It is forbidden to touch each other, and now I will interchange he and she, him and her, and I will say clearly if there's a difference. But otherwise, all the dinim apply equally to men and to the husbands and the wives, unless we note the exception. So, you may not touch each other even through another object, like even with a 10-foot pole, even with a 10-foot pole. Your clothing you are wearing is considered you. Even if there's 7 layers of clothing, if you're dressed in those clothing, your clothing may not touch his clothing that he is wearing. So that's the halacha. How do we practice this? Be careful when you're walking down the street. If those of you are newlyweds, it takes a while, and then you realize how close and distant you could walk down the street and you won't be bumping into each other. When you're sitting together, let's say in a bus, so if it's like a city bus, you could practice extra care, and you sit in a way that you don't touch each other, and your clothing doesn't touch each other. But if you're going to be in Eretz Yisrael, and those buses go up and down those mountains, there's no way you could sit next to each other. You'll be on top of each other and over each other. Better bump into a stranger than topple on top of your husband. When you're on the airplane, and hopefully you're not toppling on top of each other, because hopefully there's no severe turbulence, but yes, perhaps you can sit next to each other with something in between you. That's if you're both skinny, and your legs are very careful that when the lady in the next seat, you move your legs, she moves her legs, and it's very organized. Practically, especially if it's a little longer flight, I think it's impossible to sit next to each other and actually not touch each other's clothing. So save your miles and upgrade to first class for when you'll be Nida and enjoy the flight. Otherwise, you could sit maybe in the bulkhead seats where you have the metal trays in between the seats, and there's a little extra leg room. But still, if it's a long flight, you may fall on top of each other, as you fall asleep. So aisle seats is always a good idea. An umbrella. If you can walk together under the umbrella without touching each other, it's probably miraculous. Unless you hold the umbrella up like a flag and it's big like a canopy and you march down the street. Otherwise, again, we are careful not to touch each other. So how does it apply? Like this, we practice caution where you are most likely to touch. So too it says in Sfarim, you don't concentrate together on reading from the same sefer, because if you're concentrating on the letters, you cannot concentrate to keep the proper distance between you. And so too, on the computer screen, maybe make the font, the size of the letters very big, but if they're small letters, you're both peering on that screen, or you want to read what's on his BlackBerry. We are cautious with this because it's hard to concentrate on the small letters and at the same time concentrate on not touching each other. If you are under a blanket, your blanket is considered your clothing. He should not touch that blanket either. Your sheet on the mattress, you're not wrapped in that sheet. You're on top of it. It's okay if he brushes past the sheet, if you're on top of that sheet, provided he doesn't move the bed, and you shouldn't feel that movement. But if he has to pass by your bed to get his shirts from the closet, you could lift the blanket onto the mattress so you can brush past if he needs to get his something from the closet. And that also is, if you, after a baby, if you're in the hospital bed and you're under the blanket, it's also under the blanket, it's like your garments. You don't hold together something that's movable. So for example, you won't spread the tablecloth together, or you won't push together a carriage or pull a carriage together, or pull apart the table to make it bigger to put in the extra leaf because you have more guests coming. A child, if the child can walk on its own with its full own support, then if one holds one hand and the other holds the other hand, and you walk together, that's fine, but you cannot swing the child together or pull the child together. But if that child needs one of you support in order to walk straight, don't go out with that child on Shabbos to your sister's Shabbos Kawa with your husband. Find a friend to walk that child with, because otherwise it's going to be difficult. First of all, you're not allowed to if the child doesn't have its own support, but also it's Shabbos. You have to be careful not to come to carrying. That's a different halacha. We don't hand, just like we don't touch anything, we don't touch him, even with something long. The next step is we do not hand anything to each other. Even for the schos of being a kvater, you don't hand the baby to your husband at the bris. We don't fire. He doesn't take fire. If you're holding a licht, he shouldn't take fire from that licht. And about handing, let's talk about Havdalah for a minute. If you're holding the Havdalah licht, he's allowed to look at the fire because he's not going to touch the fire. But afterwards, just think about this. You may not hand the Havdalah licht to your husband in order to pour the wine over. Neither can you hold it for him to pour the wine over. So either you could put it down on the metal plate or not on the paper plate, obviously. Or if you do have a burnable, whatever it's called, a plate that could burn, so he can put down the cup and you could take it and you could pour the wine over it, but you may not hand him that Havdalah licht. Yes, you could have a Havdalah licht holder if you'd like to. Now the besamim, we don't hold for him to smell the besamim either. If you are holding something like a pushka, a purse, or the garbage bag, he cannot help you clear the table by putting the garbage into the garbage bag that you're holding. He doesn't put a penny in the pushka that you're holding, or he doesn't take something put it in the purse or take it out of the purse. Now the question is, if you're holding a baby, is that considered a separate person? Or if you're holding the baby, he shouldn't put the pacifier in the baby's mouth, or a toy, or a bottle. And the answer is, when the baby has no support of its own, you're holding the baby, you're the baby's support, he shouldn't put anything into the baby or out of the baby. Once that baby grows into a self-supporting infant, there are those that are more lenient. You can ask your Rav, to what extent do you avoid putting something into the baby's hand or onto the baby's lap if the other spouse is holding the baby or the child on the lap. If he's bringing you the baby to your bed, of course he will not put the baby on your blanket, because that's like putting it in your lap or putting it in you. You move the blanket aside, he could put it on the mattress, but some say it's better if he does it with a shinui, like with his left hand. I just want to, as a side note, add in here that the custom by many Hasidim is, and that it is minig beis harav, that's in the Rebbe's family, that in public we're very careful. We don't show, we keep these dinei harchokos in public. And that is an extension that it is written in Kitzur Shulchan Aruch that a couple shouldn't display any physical affection in front of others. Now what it means, physical affection, by Hasidim we're careful even to this extent. And it includes the pictures that you take of each other that other people see, as a couple, and that are posted. They should be posted in a way of Chassidim that that it's clear that there's no touching in public. It's not halacha about to what extent, but by Chassidim we're careful. Energy. Not only do you not feel each other's physical touch, but your energy, like fanning, you don't fan each other. You don't blow the dust from each other's clothing. Or if you want to open up that fountain for him to drink, so you know the way the water squirts out, that's your energy. Feeling each other's movements, you don't sit together on a couch or any bench that would swing or rock or move because of the other one's weight. So if the couch is so heavy that you cannot feel any movements, or the bench is so heavy it's attached to the wall, then it's fine. If there's any movements, we don't do it unless there are those that allow the husband and wife, when they're needed, to sit on the same couch, for example. If somebody else sits between you, obviously it has to be somebody that is allowed to sit, that's okay to sit between you if there's touch. For example, if it's going to be your brother or his sister or your father or his mother, and things like that. And a child, it depends. So l'chatchil, we're careful. When you buy a couch, I don't think it's a matter of how many pillows and how many cushions, because it depends. If it's leather, it's more sinking. If it's more bouncy, if it's on wheels. So try it out when you go shopping. Try with a friend. Or if you're not nida, try with your husband before you buy that couch to make sure if you're allowed to both sit on it together, because sometimes the cushions over here, like where you sit, are separate, but the back, when you plop down from the back, you could feel each other's movements. So you gotta be careful with that. Beds. We need 2 totally separate beds. They cannot be connected whatsoever, not with a headboard, not with furniture. They have to be 2 totally separate beds. He sleeps and you sleep in 2 separate beds. Let me tell you, when you go to hotels, looks like sometimes there's furniture that connects the beds. So if that happens to you, you can order a trundle bed so he could sleep not on the floor. He'll also sleep on a bed. You could order that. If you are a mother of a kala, I'm just letting you know that this has happened. Pay attention. When you're ordering, they'll have a hotel room for the chas and kala. So the chas and kala, the bride and groom, already need 2 beds. Then they realize in the middle of the night that the furniture is attached and she's nida, and they're ordering a trundle bed, and the person doesn't understand what party is going on in that bridal room, why they need so many beds. So because it has happened, please be cautious. Space between the beds. Halachically, as long as the beds don't touch, the bedding don't touch, and if you'd stick out your hand and he'd stick out his hand, you won't come to touch, that is sufficient room between the beds. But the custom is that we have an amma between the beds. Our amma is 19 inches. I don't know it in centimeters. 19 inches between the beds, that's the minimum. I also want to mention, I'm going to say to you that the Rebbe answered somebody in a letter. It was somebody that was trying to have children, and as follows. And this is when the couple was tahar. Minig b'nei Yisrael yir shemayim, the custom of Yidden who are God-fearing Jews. She tzadik lamid, like she tzarich liyos, there needs to be beis mitais nifradais, 2 separate beds. And in parentheses, the Rebbe added, al yidei shulchan laila v'kayetze bezeh. They should be separated by a night table or something similar, like an object between the beds. That's an answer from the Rebbe. If you want to change beds, you shouldn't do it when you're nida, because he cannot sleep in your bed. Of course not. He cannot lie in your bed. He cannot even sit on your bed when you're nida. So if during your nida time, he won't be able to sleep not on the old bed, not on the new bed, so wait till you're tahar. And you are allowed to sit on his bed if he's not sitting on the bed, obviously. But if he's around, it's okay. You may lie on his bed if he's not present. So that's a difference between the husband and the wife. I just want to interject here with a story that I heard from a woman in Brazil. And she said there was a woman that she knows that for years she was trying very hard that Rebbe Rashab with a child. And amen. Let me tell you the end of the story. There was a double amen, Baruch Hashem. But she came across, the shlucha came across this woman, and she told her that she'll ask the Rebbe for a bracha, but the Rebbe says that if you want to have a skula for having children is to review the dinim of Taharas and Hamishpacha. She offered to review the dinim together, and they came across this halacha of the beds. The woman said, we have a huge bed. It's the size of the entire bedroom. And when I'm nida, we put towels in between. I sleep on one end, he sleeps on the other end. We don't feel each other. It's this whole carved, beautiful piece of furniture that was handcrafted. But we cannot even feel each other. So the shlucha says, listen, the halacha is we don't share the bed. Maybe this will be the key for your bracha. They ordered a special carpenter to split the beds in half and redo that entire gorgeous piece of furniture. And the first month that they slept properly, 9 months later, she gave birth to twins. So this was the makar of her bracha. You don't take a ride together alone or a walk together alone if the purpose is just to enjoy each other's company. It's got to be for a purpose. For example, you're going to pick something up, to drop something off, to visit somebody, then you create a purpose and it becomes allowed. Some say this halacha only applies if the walk or the drive is in a nice place of nature, like in park, like botanical gardens, in a park, ganes and pardesim, in an orchard, or on the ocean, where it's a nice, scenic, intimate place that lends itself to a closeness. But other than that, you got to take a drive or a walk together. You could ask your Rav. You will not go on a nature hike, but you can go walking together for exercise. Boating is always a question. I don't mean if you need to take the Staten Island ferry to get from here to Staten Island, but any boating that you do, even if it's with your family, you ask a shaila what kind of boating would be permitted to do when you're nida. And so too, when it comes to vacations, you'll have to modify those vacations. Some people can plan their vacations based on their cycle because they're so regular and the husband could take off whenever you decide. But some people, it doesn't work that way with all our fancy plans. The vacation would have to be modified. Obviously, you upgrade to first-class tickets, goes without saying. You will visit maybe a lot of malls and museums and the places of nature. You'll have to work around with the Rav what could make it permissible. I just want to tell you that even if you're Nida, even if you're Tahar, the same Eibishter that's over here is the same Eibishter that you're taking along with you on vacation, that third partner in marriage, and you consult him, make sure he's also enjoying this vacation 100%. I just want to interject here, just a little incident. Sometimes I have a baby, I get these magazines in the mail. I leaf through them to see if there's anything I could use for my lessons, and then I throw them in the garbage. So I once saw people, they were asking, like in the front page, people should write in interesting places where your baby was conceived. And people answered with their name and their city. Could you imagine? I was so embarrassed for them. But every one of those situations was something like this, that they were alone in a nice scenic place, in the orchard, on the secluded beach, on the canoe, whatever would say over here that you should keep a distance because it could bring a closeness. Every one of them was yichud in a place of nice scenic place. So it proved it. I don't know why they weren't embarrassed. I don't know. Okay. There are two acts that we're going to mention here that shows an endearment one to another. One is making the other one's bed, preparing it to go to sleep. You have to remember in the olden days, there was one-room houses. They put the beds to the side, and at night when it's time to go to sleep, the nice wife, she pulled out the mattresses, she fluffed them, made them pretty. I don't know if she added some straw, I don't know how it was, that was very endearing. So for today, we are allowed to do the housekeeping part in the presence of our husband, which would be unstuffing the linen or stuffing them or undoing the sheets. But the spreading, nice, to make it nice, or the fluffing, you don't do in his presence, and neither him for you. He could also do it for you, don't forget. So it goes both ways. Also, you don't prepare water for each other or to wash each other's hands, face, or feet, or even putting the water down is endearing. You have to remember, the husband worked in the field, he came home with a hot, schwitzy feet, and the wife, she schlepped the water from the well, she heated it up. This is my own imagination. It's not halacha, I didn't read it anywhere, it doesn't have a source, it's in my head. I'm just picturing this endearing scene, okay? And he came home all verschwitzt, and wasn't it so gracious, he could dip his verschwitzte feet in this refreshing water. Very endearing. Nowadays, Baruch Hashem, we have running water. You don't open up the faucet or run in the bath. That's really what it's all about. What about ma'am achrayim and negelwasser? There are those that say it's fine, it's for a mitzvah, it's not for pleasure, and others say better be machmir, be strict, and ma'am achrayim you don't put directly in front of him, you do it with a shinui, like a little bit to the side or with your left hand, and negelwasser you don't place for each other their personal negelwasser. It's fine if you take neutral negelwasser, like 2 kvarts with 1 shissel, and you put it down. It's not the pink is for her and the blue is for him. It's neutral. That will be fine. Of course, if there is no negelwasser and he needs negelwasser, for sure you could rely on the opinion that says you're allowed to bring him negelwasser, so you shouldn't have to walk out of bed to get his own. So that's the sense of touch. If I skipped something out, you could pass it up in the end when it comes to touch or touching the heart or endearment. Perfume, smell. The sense of smell is very deep. Hashem put in the neshama, blew through the nose. That means through the nose, it could reach very, very deep. The Taharas was an avodah that was very, very special. Loi sinaf stands for loi sehene min ha'af. The pleasure with the nose of the other woman's perfume is already a touch of loi sinaf. So the rule over here is he may not smell the perfume on your body. If you have a specific perfume that's your smell, he may not even smell it in the bottle. So what do you do? The halacha is not, you shall not wear perfume. Obviously, especially in the pre-deodorant days, a woman needed to smell from something. So a little bit perfume made her feel pashut like a mensch. So there are two ways of wearing perfume. There's a little perfume that you wear just because you want to feel good. If your husband is sensitive even to that amount, so you'll put it on once he leaves the house or once you leave the house, and by the time the day is over, when you come back home, the smell wore off. Or you put it on once you get to the wedding, so by the time you come back, it wore off. If he doesn't notice the smell that little bit just for you to feel good, then it's okay. He cannot smell it. You have to figure out when you're tahar what the sensitivity of his nose is. Regular shampoo or hand creams or soaps has a little fragrance that's normal. There's not anything special. But perfumed hand creams, you have to be careful with it. Obviously, you don't use it when you go like this and that whiff spreads all over or things like that. And so that's with the sense of smell. Sound. He is forbidden to hear your singing voice, even if you think you sound like a frog. Chanting is also included. I don't want to chant in case there's a man listening to this, but chanting would be like when you say, La Yehudim Haisa Eira V'Simcha V'Sasain, add the singing notes, V'Kar Kein Tiyolanu, and that would be chanting. Chanting is also forbidden. If you need to sing, because you want to sing with your children, if you sing in another room and he's drowning out your voice by his whatever, that could be an arrangement that could be made between both of you. There are those that allow that if baby is screaming and the only way you can comfort him is by singing that lullaby, and there's no way you could be in another room. There are those that say that for this particular situation, it can be allowed. You can check with your Rav for any details. That is the sense of sound. Good. Playing music. This you're going to shilas if you're just doing your practice or you're playing him a piece. So you can ask your Rav about playing musical instruments if there can be something of an act of endearment when it comes to that. That's under discussion. Eating together. Eating together brings a closeness. When the Chachamim wanted to undo intermarriage, they instituted rules how we don't eat with the non-Jews. Because just the two of you eating together already brings a closeness. So if you're eating together, it doesn't matter if it's a 7-course dinner or a little snack. If you're both eating together at the same table, there are rules that apply. Number one, you have to put a siman heker. You have to put something of distinction, something to remind you that you shouldn't get not just emotionally close, but you shouldn't come to share from the food from the same plate. Now, if other people are sitting around, we still need to put a siman heker. There are those that say that if another adult is sitting between both of you, and there's no way that you could share each other's food, there are those that allow not to have to put a siman heker, or if you put it down l'chatchila, but then it disappears because the hostess just wanted to have that clean table, you could rely on those that say, again, if another person is sitting between you, and there's no way you can share each other's food, then you may not have to put that siman heker even l'chatchila. You could ask your Rav how he paskins. I also want to mention that I heard this from my father, who heard this from Rebbe Fegelshtak of Montreal a while back, that Rebbe Fegelshtak got married. It was before the Rebbe became Rebbe. So his Shabbos Sheva Brachos, there was going to be the Chassan and Kala were going to be sitting next to each other at one table. So he asked the Rebbe, who was then called the Ramash, what kind of siman heker could they put by the Shabbos Sheva Brachos between them? So the Rebbe answered that minig beis harav, the minig of the Rebbe's family, is that in public we act as if we're nida. We keep everything. We keep that distance from A to Z. So if they take upon themselves that they will behave that way, So if there's other people around, for them, those other people serve as their siman heker, and they do not need to put down an additional siman heker. Now, this would only apply if you actually keep this, not if sometimes you're careful and sometimes not, and it depends who's around, if it's your mother, if it's your father, if it's your sister, your brother, your cousin, your neighbor, or the stranger. But I just want to tell you that there is such a concept. And how it applies to you, you'll check with your Rav. What can serve as a siman heker? You have one of three choices. You don't have to do all three. Some people make a mistake with this, the way it says in the book. Either one, or two, or three. Now, you could be a couple that's very routine. This is your siman heker, and you always have it, and that's it. And if you want to be original and creative, you can choose something different and elevate a different object at every meal. But whatever it is, you both have to know what it is, and you both decide together what's going to be that reminder for you. If there was a situation where you couldn't speak to him, if it's okay if you put your own and he puts his own, ask your Rav how he paskins on that particular situation. What are the possibilities? I'll mention them in the order that the Sefer mentions them. You could put a food that you will not be eating during this meal, like the extra chal of the lechem mishnah, or some other food that you know you won't be tasting throughout this meal. Some Rabbanim allow not even a whole challah loaf, but even a slice of challah that you decided that you won't touch during the meal at all. None of you will eat, and I don't mean touch, I mean you'll eat during the meal. And please, hostesses, leave the stuff on the table when you have those guests, especially if it's Shabbos, because they have to use something that you're providing, not something that you bring along to your shviger's house or your whoever's house. Because if you could bring something, you could have that huge bundle of keys, your purse, whatever. You could find something to put down. But if you're coming Shabbos empty-handed, you have to rely on what's something in the hostess's house. So, food that won't be eaten during the meal, an object of noticeable height, and that's questionable if it's a few inches or just something that's eye-catching between you. Cannot just be another fork or another little cheap napkin that's floating around the table. It's got to be something that's eye-catching that you would notice. And as matter, if it must be of a certain height, there are those that want it to be a couple inches tall. Not everybody is machmer on that. But it should be between you or between your eye, where you're both right in front of you or between you for sitting next to each other. Now the difference between the food and the object is that the food you cannot use during the meal, but the object you're allowed to use during the meal. If you need to use it, or there's another thing that you could do. If that object is usually anywhere in the table, for example, your napkin holder is usually in the middle of the table and now you put it between you. You're allowed to use those napkins from the napkin holder, okay? Because it's an object, you may use it during the... And the third option would be using two separate placemats, only if you don't normally do so. If you normally use placemats, for you it's not something different. So two separate placemats, or one of you eats on the tablecloth and one of you eats on the table, or one of you folds over the tablecloth so it becomes like a double tablecloth, and the other one is only using on the single tablecloth. So again, that you're not eating on this, like you have a separate placemat or tablecloth under you. You can use even a napkin as a placemat. The question is, speaking to different Rabbanim, one Rav says, as long as the napkin is under the plate, it could peek out a bit. As long as the other one notices, it's considered eating on a separate placemat napkin. And another Rav said, no, you have to open up the napkin as if it is a true placemat. It cannot just be peeking out. So you could ask your Rav how you want to practice between you. If you'd like to know if this is an okay siman heker or not, do not send the questions to me. You're going to you're going to ask your Rav the question directly, because part of the exercise of this 6 week review, if you remember a couple shiurim back, was that you must have a Rav to help you with Taharas Hamishpacha. And this is a perfect shaila to ask. It's nothing personal. It's about the object of the siman heker. It's not about you. It's not about your underwear. It's not about your toilet paper. It's just about an object. Once you get used to asking about objects, then you'll get used to asking about yourself. It's an easy way. So you'll ask your own Rav about if this is for you a good siman heker or not. Okay, we finally chose that siman heker. Now we can start eating, Baruch Hashem. So you're sitting down to eat. You cannot share food from the same plate, cup, or napkin, or bag of low-fat, soy, vegetable chips. You need to not share together. Yes, it's okay if there's a communal platter and everyone takes a portion and puts it in their own individual plate. Of course, that's okay. But you don't, even if other people, let's say there's a bowl of nuts, you take one, he takes one, you take one, you're not allowed to do that. Even if other people eat in between, you don't eat from the same container. So too, you don't have 2 straws from 1 can of soda, and even dips. You don't dip the carrot stick in the dip, and he dips the celery stick in the dip. Again, you're eating from the same dip, from the same plate. You don't do that. As long as one of you always personalizes it, the other one can eat from that main dish. The question is if you're going to remember, or if he's going to remember. And therefore, if you want to play it on the safe side, if you each have your own individual plate, cup, or napkin, you're usually safe that way. It's usually okay. Now, we're not talking about sharing. Now, I just want to mention something. If there's a loaf of bread, you're not eating, if you take a loaf, if you take a piece, it's good to put it right in front of you. You don't take from the container and put it straight into your mouth. I mean, not the container, the plastic bag, and put it straight into your mouth. It's good to put it down. Again, you're personalizing it, and then you're eating it. Okay? Now, we're not talking about sharing from the same plate. The next thing that we talk about is leftovers, which means you began to eat, and you don't want it anymore. You know, you went to the restaurant. I want to tell you something. Whoever's from New York, they serve huge portions. When I was out of town, like a portion was like this. You come here, they give you this huge salad and the huge French fries and the huge whatever. I don't go. I remember the one time. Anyways, so listen. You started eating and it's too much for you. You can't finish it. You want to give it to him to finish, right? Or your own, you took yourself a plate at home. You began eating the chicken, the rice, whatever it was, and it's just too much for you. Can he just finish it? You're not sharing anymore. You're done. Let him just take it and eat it. And here it's different between the husband and the wife. The wife is always permitted to eat from the husband's leftovers, from his cup, plate, or napkin. You could eat it straight away. But for the husband, it's different. When he's digesting food that you ate, he's ingesting you. That's really, really special. I want to ask you just a question. Whose leftovers would you eat anyways? If you eat somebody's leftovers, it already shows there's a closeness. Or if you share, whose hand would you allow to go into your bag of popcorn? Only somebody that's close with you, right? That's how we are. I mean, unless, I'm sorry to say, but I know a true chassid. Remember the story that they rinsed out the glass? And one of the Rebbeim said something about it? Do you remember? There's a story like that before the friend drank from the cup, he rinsed it out. And it showed that there was a lack of closeness. The chassidim are supposed to be Hamishpacha, and it showed already a distance. Okay, but anyways, forget about that story for a minute. So the leftovers, in order for him to eat your leftovers, so he has to transfer it to a different plate, his own plate to another plate. The same thing with a cup. If you started the orange juice and you don't want to finish it, he cannot drink it straight from your cup. He could pour it into his own cup, and then he could drink it. So either transfer the keli, or if somebody else ate in between. Some say if you left the room, he can eat it while you're gone. If he does not know that it's your leftovers, you don't have to tell him, because it's the fact that you ate from it, that's what's so special to him. And he can eat from your germs. That means if you drank from a cup, it doesn't have to be rinsed before he drinks from it. So that's about leftovers. So just to recap, if you went in the car and you bought yourself a drink. If you started the Coke, can he finish it? Nope. It has to be transferred, or somebody has to drink in between. But let's say he started the Coke and he cannot finish it. Can you finish it straight from the cup? Okay. Your leftovers, his leftovers, you can drink straight from the can. Great, you were really listening and practicing. Now comes the further. Now serving each other. It really feels good to serve somebody, to put their personal plate in front of them. Don't you feel like a nice hostess when you're putting the plate in front of somebody? It feels good. The other way around also feels good, being served. Doesn't it feel good when someone puts your personal dish right in front of you? Some of you look like you never even, unless you go to the wedding, you don't even know what we're talking about. when you're tahar, do that to each other. It really feels good. But anyways, so serving the personal plate is an act of endearment. So you don't put his personal portion right directly in front of him. You do it with a shinoi. That means either you use your left, if you're, the other hand, but make sure not to spill the soup, or you put it a little bit to the side, and he pulls it towards himself. And the same thing for you to him. Another situation is everybody already has their plate in front of them, and you're going around the table and you're putting in kugel, 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 kugel. So when you get to him, you don't put the kugel right in front on his plate, right in front of him. What will he do? He will push his plate out, you put the kugel, and he pulls it towards himself. Like this, you didn't serve right in front of him. So that's the serving. Yes, you're allowed to put the communal salad bowl or platter or whatever right in front, because then it's not his personal portion, it's the communal portion, that's fine. Getting back to hostessing, if you would put out all the pieces of cake in cupcake holders, each one is already individualized, it makes it easier. Rather, if you would have just put a plate of cake or cookies, then you still have to give napkins for your guests. So like this, each one turns into an individual portion, and the couple is not eating from the same plate. Pouring a drink. Now, pouring a drink is also a special occasion. Water can always be poured, one for another, directly in front of each other. Doesn't even have any questions whatsoever. What about an unfinished tea or coffee? An unfinished tea or coffee is like water. That means you could place in front of him or pour in front of him an unfinished tea or coffee if he needs to add the milk or the creamer or something else, and then he finishes up, so then it's fine. But if it's a finished tea, like that herbal tea, you cannot bring him a finished tea. That's not water anymore. You could bring him the water, bring him the tea bag, and he'll do that very special act of dipping that tea bag into the tea and creating his own little drink. So other than that, any drink that's not considered water, you do not pour, it says bifonov, which means in front of the other person. Now, what does that mean? So there are different opinions. One opinion will say he should not be aware that you're pouring the drink, meaning you could either pour it in the other room, the 2 cups of orange juice, and then you bring them and you won't put it down directly in front of him. You'll put it either with your left hand or a little to the side, and then that's how you serve the drink. Or by the time he comes home from work, those 2 gorgeous glasses, with that gorgeous concoction of punch and who knows what, with the straws and whatever, are already standing there on the table waiting for your husband to drink. There are those that say that if you want to pour him a drink, or for that matter, perhaps even serving him something, if he turns his face and you put it down, that may be okay. Check with your Rav how he paskins. There are those that say, and you could ask your Rav about this, and different Rabbanim will definitely have different opinions about this. Let's say you are serving you have in front of you, I don't know why I'm serving always fleischiks, let's go to milchiks. You have lasagna and salad, and you're preparing everybody's plate, right? So you have it at the table, you take one plate, you put the lasagna and salad, and you put it in front of this one and in front of that one. There's those that say that you shouldn't also prepare the plate directly in front of your husband. It shouldn't be bifonov. What that means, or if that applies, there definitely is a debate about it, but because it's mentioned in one of the Sfarim, I'm mentioning it here. Now comes an additional, about pouring a drink. I must say that there is a Rav here in Crown Heights that says, that paskins, that the husband should never pour a drink other than water for his wife, even not bifonel. That means you only do it self-service. So just check with your Rav how he paskins about the husband pouring a drink that's not water for his wife. Now, there's another little point over here, which is sending the wife wine or any other drink that's a special drink, which is interpreted as not water, obviously. On Pesach, we'll understand why even the orange juice is so special. When you have to hand squeeze it, you don't take it for granted. And one day when you have to milk the cow, you understand why milk is also not stam. So sending her wine. So let's discuss Kiddush now. So let's say, okay, I'm making Kiddush. It's on vodka. Okay, it's wine. So I'm the husband. I'm making Kiddush, right? So if you're my wife, you're standing right in front of me, right? I'm pouring the wine to make Kiddush. I'm not pouring it for you, even though I know you're going to drink from it, because I need this full becher whether you're there or not. So I'm pouring it for myself. So the pouring is not a problem. I pour the wine. Should I stop? We'll say a little story. We'll say a story. Great. I'm going to tell you a story that doesn't have to be announced over the whole world. Okay. So years ago, we'll continue with the wine and we'll say l'chaim when it comes back on. So years ago, when I was young and innocent and naive, and it really was true. I was once young and innocent and naive, and if you would have told me I would be standing and teaching Taharas Hamishpacha in front of a crowd, I'd say, you're dreaming, you're hallucinating. It's impossible. I taught Chumash. So in those years when I taught Chumash and Parashat Tefillah and Rukut Sichos, I was young, and I moved to a town and I was expecting my third child. And I was and am very into natural birthing. I won't have my baby at home for personal reasons. My mother had a little scare on that. But I wanted to have a natural birthing place. So wherever I moved, where I went, okay. So when I asked my friends, I asked the people there, where's a hospital that has like midwives that are into natural birthing, but I wanted a doctor backup just in case. So they gave me the name of the hospital. I was in my 7th month, and I went, I visited, and it was all nice and fine. And in my 9th month, I decided I want to take a tour of the hospital because I want to see where you come in, where you go out, what's the birthing place like. So I take this tour, and I was in for a shock because it was a Christian hospital. There were crosses with kishkis on every wall. Every hospital gown had crosses. Christian prayers 3 times a day on the microphone. Now, the Rebbe had just spoken about the importance of surrounding children, newborn infants, with only Kedusha. So what am I to do? I was stuck. So first I asked them, what if I would cover, the images, and they were so insulted, it wasn't even a question I could ask. So now I'm stuck, I'm in my 9th month, and I need to find a different option. So with some investigation, I found out that in another wing of the hospital, there's a freestanding birthing room. It has no medical equipment, but it doesn't have any of this Christian stuff. It's like its own thing. And it's meant for people who would really want to have the baby at home, but it's like close enough, very close to the medical, if there's any chas v'shalom, a medical situation, it takes 4 minutes to be wheeled from that room to where medical equipment is available. So I had to sign all these forms that I won't sue the hospital if chas v'shalom something happens in those 4 minutes. So I signed everything to the Eibishter, and now I have to meet a new group of midwives. They never had a frum couple before. I don't know about Jewish, but for sure not Jewish Orthodox couple before. So I meet with them on a Monday morning. What is your birthing plan? They ask me. So I said, now you have to know the philosophy of natural birthing. The husband is very involved with massaging and helping and cutting the cord and catching the baby and the whole thing. So here I come and I say, my birthing plan is my husband will not be massaging and catching and this, and they looked at me like almost like, what are you doing here? I said, look, we're religious. And he will be, of course, checking up on me, but he'll basically be praying outside the door and from time to time coming in to check up on me. And I would like them to do all the massaging and the compresses and the back rubbing and all that. They wrote it all down. I said, but after the baby's born, I want to be modest, and my husband will come in. Oh, he'll give you a hug, he'll give you a kiss. I said, no. He's going to say, Mazel Tov, congratulations. I didn't say it with such a pitch. I said, Mazel Tov, congratulations. They wrote it down. And then I said something about Shabbos, about electricity, about hot water. I don't remember what I said. And then I'm going to meet them next week, right? Once a week in your 9th month, you meet them. So we're going to meet them next week. Now that Shabbos was the Shabbos before Yud Shvat Shnas Ha'arbaim. Chabad Lubavitch is celebrating the Rebbe's 40th year of leadership. Where are Chassidim all flocking to? To be with the Rebbe. Now, you have to understand, my previous baby was almost 2 weeks overdue. My baby before that, was early, but it was Erev Pesach. I was scrubbing the floors. Of course, he was born on the spot, basically. But, so my husband flew to New York. Drove with my Baruch Hashem, my son, who was 2.5, and was ever thankful that he got that green Tanya on Yud Shvat. Like, he was so excited. Till today, he's ever thankful for the risk my husband took. Anyways, my husband was in New York, and Mitzvah Shabbos, I went into labor. So I show up in this birthing center, never mind my husband out the door, but my husband out of town. So you can already imagine what they think about Jewish Orthodox couples. It was the longest labor I ever had, until my last one, to date. And my son, till today, has such derech eretz for his father and his mother, but for sure for his father. He waited till my husband could find the flight to come back. It took forever. But when he did come back, I finally calmed down, and the labor finally progressed. And Baruch Hashem, by the time he was born, it was already Yud Aleph Shvat. Because Yud Shvat was either Monday, it was I think Tuesday. You could look up on the calendar. It was a very long labor. Like Baruch Hashem, I was in this natural place. Otherwise, they probably would have induced and medicated and cut and who knows what. Anyways, so I remember I called my father. I said, after all this, I could have had the baby Yud Shvat. And my father said, the Rebbe just said a Sicha HaYud Aleph is more special than Yud. So yay for that. Anyways, 24 hours you're out of there, because really you're supposed to have your baby at home. So you really want to be in your own bed, and you really do want to be in your own bed. So like this, they give you a couple hours just to get strong enough to go home. So we're leaving, and the 3 of those midwives were there. And they asked me if we could please take a picture of you and your husband and the baby. And I must confess, is this a live feed already? The entire world has to hear my confession. What's going on? Is it? Yeah, it's great. Okay, so I confessed in front of the entire world. I was wearing a tichel, not a sheitel. I did not want to be photographed in a tichel. First of all, if you're wearing a tichel right, and your hair is properly covered, I don't like the way I look like that. I look like bald. I don't like it. So that's number 1. Number 2, I was the Chabad Rebbitzin that moved to town. What, they're going to put in the newspapers, Chabad Rebbitzin, I'm wearing a tichel? What a busha would be. So I cannot be photographed with this tichel. I never did it again. You're supposed to wear a sheitel in public. So every other time I had a sheitel going home from the hospital, but I guess in the whole, whatever happened, I didn't have a sheitel. I still remember the color of the tichel because of what happened in 2 seconds. So I asked the women, what are you going to do with this picture? What do you need it for? So they said as follows. When you came to this hospital, and when you came to us for that interview, and you told us what the birthing plan is, when you left, we questioned, is this a marriage? Is this love? He's not going to give her a kiss after the baby's born. He's not going to touch her. We're going to observe you and see if you're really in love. Could you imagine what color of face I turned? If I would have known, I would have had the baby in the moon, for sure. Anyways, they had first of all, it took me 15 years just to repeat the story. Now I'm not so edel anymore, but just thinking about it made me blush. I couldn't even tell anybody. But anyways, now I want to see their records. So they had this whole file on me. And this is what they were saying, that they've seen so many couples on top of each other, under each other, with each other, together with each other, okay? And then this is the first time that they saw a couple. You know what they told me? You were absolutely modest when he was around. Do you know you didn't touch each other even one time when we were around? I said, okay. But they said, you should have seen the look in your husband's eyes when he came into the room to wish you that mazel tov. We've never seen anything like it. That deep connection, there's something so true going on between you. We've never witnessed any kind of marriage like this. We want to remember it. There's something so unique that you have that you can show such deep connection without even a touch. We want to capture this. Do you mind if we take a picture? I could not even look at my husband and ask him, how do you feel about it? After all, I'm nida. Do you feel romantic? I couldn't. I was blushing like the color of my tichel. So I said, yes, take a picture, and I ran for my life. But let me tell you, now I want to see that. I want to be able to show you what Lahavdil, 3 non-Jewish women saw. And I tell you, I did not put on a show. I was a grouchy wife after a baby. Could you imagine? I was up already for 24, 36 hours with this crazy labor where everything went wrong. Like in my mind, Baruch Hashem was a healthy baby. You could already imagine what and my friend brought me soup and it spilled on the floor. You know, it wasn't like it was this perfect situation. But why am I telling you this? Because if we have something, such a gift that the Eibishter gave us, such a gift of emes, of such a deep emistic connection, we keep those dinim to the detail. We have such a true gift that 3 non-Jews lahavdil were able to see just in a matter of a few hours. We should cherish that gift, really, and thank the Eibishter for the beautiful gift that he gave us in this Dinei Harchokos. So it went back on, I guess, this Hashgacha Pratis in front of the whole world. But I guess there's a lesson that we could all learn together. So back to the Kiddush, we'll say L'chaim for the great gift that the Eibishter gave us. So I'm the husband, okay? So to fill up the Kiddush, that's not the Becher, that's not a problem because he's filling it up for himself, not for you. He makes Kiddush, he drinks the Kiddush. Now, he cannot send you the wine. He cannot ask somebody to bring you the wine, like he cannot ask the children to bring you the wine. He puts down the wine. You can stand next to him and take it yourself. You could ask somebody to bring it to you, but he cannot motion or push or send or ask. He cannot initiate that sending of the wine. You can request it, and you can get it. Or another option is, once there's more people around the table, of guests, besides you, there's another 2 people. Well, if he makes Kiddush, if he wants to pour 3 little cups, and it's not that the gorgeous, the fancy one is for the wife, and the 2 regular ones are for the guests. They're neutral cups. Anyone could take anyone. It's a rabbin. He can pour a few little cups, and then they could be passed along, because it's not meyached, it is not individualizing it for you. Or, you know, the Kiddush fountain. That's the idea. Okay, now let me tell you another thing. If he drank from this wine, and then you drank from the wine, what does that wine become now? Your leftovers. Unless somebody else, he can only drink it if somebody else drank after that, or if he pours it into another cup. Okay, that's about leftovers. Let me tell you something else. If by mistake he sent you the wine, you're not allowed to drink it. You could be Yotze Kiddush without drinking wine. The reason we drink it is Mishum Chavivos HaMitzvah. We love the mitzvah for a sign of endearment. We want to drink from the Kiddush. So you could not drink it, you know, and just put it down. It's usher for you to drink. That's how strict it is. So that's with the food. And now for the last one of our 5 senses, which is the sense of sight. Your husband may not... Another l'chaim. Okay, thank you. I must now, in front of the entire world, thank Krendi Klein, Chaya Klein, Chaisar Zarchi, for being the most amazing support staff, and of course Rabbi Chaikin. You don't know how many hours and hours are being put into these shiurim in advance, and afterwards the editing, the cutting and the pasting and the reviewing. You don't begin to even imagine what goes on behind it, and the fundraising and the preparing and the planning, from the little drinks and this little table stand to all the major things that are going on. So a big yasher koyach to everybody involved. And I'm sorry if I missed, and if I don't know even who's behind it. I just know the people that I'm personally in contact with, but I'm sure there's even more people behind it, and Mrs. Shmueli could list them all. But let me tell you, that's what it is. Okay, sight. Your husband can see you when you're absolutely tznius. Now let me tell you something. What does it mean, tznius? Erva in English means naked. Who defines what is the part of your body that's called naked? If I would go around on the street, you and other people would ask, what does it mean naked? Everybody would come up with a different taich. But Torah defines for us what it means undressed, or what part of your skin is called nakedness. One of my friends told me this incident, and it just will get you to understand how we have to think along the Torah lines. A few years ago, it was already a long time ago, when the Empire Kosher was in the Shuk over there in Troy, so it's a long time ago. It was very, very hot in the store. And she walks into the store, it was in the summer, the air conditioner was broken, and the lady at the cash register, you call that the cashier? So it was a Spanish woman. She was standing with a tank top and shorts that's called capris. That's what they told, that's how it's called. She was wearing a t-shirt, but because it was tight-fitting, she had a jacket over it, because tight-fitting is not tznius, it's revealing, it's not hiding, right? So she goes to this, as she's waiting in line, she tells this cashier, "It's so hot in here. What's going on with the air conditioning?" So the Spanish woman tells her, "Well, why don't you just take off your jacket?" So she tells the cashier, "Why don't you take off your top?" So the cashier says, "You want me to stand here naked?" So she says, "You want me to stand here naked?" Verstanden? You understand what we're saying? Who defines what's naked? The Eibishter defines what's naked. And if the Eibishter says this part of your body is considered private, not to be shared with anybody except for your husband, it means it's called private and not to be shared with anybody. Even if you and your husband both agree that for you and him, the elbow is not naked. It's not, an elbow is nothing, a knee is nothing, this is nothing, and that is nothing. You're fine if the entire world sees it. You're not, it doesn't matter if it's not exclusive. It could be shared. But do you think I want to see it? If the Eibishter says it's naked, I don't want to see your nakedness. Maybe be mindful of the people around you that are sensitive still to what parts of the body are called naked. Lahavdil, but if somebody would come to your porch and be less dressed than you think is appropriate for standing on your porch, you would feel, "Excuse me, this is my property, please, there's rules of conduct here, don't expose yourself." So the same thing, Torah says what means exposing yourself, and Torah says what means privacy. Part of marriage, kiddushin, means that you are exclusive to your husband, to the exclusion of all others. That's part of the holiness of your relationship. So, yes, whatever is called naked, another man cannot see. Whatever is called naked, your own husband cannot see when you are nida. And what does Torah say naked? Let's see what Torah says dressed, okay? You need to be dressed, your collarbone is here, where the neck starts slanting and turns into shoulders, that's covered. All the way past your elbows, that means when you lift your hands because you want to get the dish from the, your elbow is still covered. So there's a little extra, so when you stretch out, it's still covered. Or it's not so loose that you could see what's going on. It's covered. Tight fitting is not called dressed. Tight fitting is called revealing, not concealing. Leave at least 50%. We don't walk around with saris and kimonos, but so we wear shirts and skirts and so on. So a woman has shapes. Leave 50% to the imagination. If you're expecting a baby, leave 50% to the imagination. Okay? Your knees, girls, ladies, the knees, feel it. There's a round bump there. It's not imagination. Okay? The Rebbe says clearly in a letter that we keep that the knees, the entire knee, that's the entire kneecap. Could you feel it? Touch it. Everybody, let's do exercise. Take your right hand or your left hand. Touch your knee. I'm serious about this. People are so confused what's naked and what's not. This is very important for Hilchas Nida and also Hilchas caring about your fellow man and woman when you're walking down the street. The Rebbe's clear instruction is that our knee should be covered in every position, including sitting down. When you're sitting down, whatever you're wearing has got to be covering your entire knee. Then it's covered. If we're Chabad, our feet have to be covered. Yes, in other circles, there's certain allowances if it's below the knee or from the ankles to the toes. We're Chabad. We're Chabad. are, and also many other communities in addition to Chabad, I'm just saying this is Chabad halacha review, your your legs have to be covered. The difference is higher from the knee and up, we cannot see the split of the legs. Lower than the knee, you could see the split, but your feet have to be covered with pantyhose or socks or whatever you want to cover that fade or hide your natural skin color. Okay? If it says in Kitzur Dinei Tara that your husband, when you're nida, should not see any part of your body that needs to be covered, including your, who knows it by heart, including your heel. That means when you walk around the house, even your heels are covered. Your feet are entirely covered. If it means wearing socks and a long dress, if you're wearing pajama pants and you're wearing no fancy Crocs that he can't see anything, whatever, it doesn't matter. However you want to cover it, when you're walking around the house, you're completely covered. Your hair has to be covered. Your tichel has to cover your hair when you're in the house. And when you're out of the house, of course, we wear a sheitel. This is another story. Okay? Do any of you have any question of what needs to be covered? Okay, you got it? This is halacha. I'm not giving any extra chumras over here. This is halacha. Believe me, I remember I usually ask my kalas if there's anything that they would have liked I should emphasize more, that would have helped them in the beginning of their married life, because after all, every minute that goes by, the time between when I was a kala and my age now, like the gap is growing wider and wider. So in order to relate to my kalas, I asked them, I need feedback. Tell me nowadays what you would have liked to hear. So there's one particular group of kalas. We're sitting around the table and we're talking about tzniusdik and night clothing. Because even when you go to sleep, you have to have tzniusdik and night clothing. What tzniusdik and night clothing is, there are different opinions. Definitely, if you're your neck has to be covered and the sleeves, if you wear those loose t-shirts, they have to be covered properly. Your tichel has to be, of course, covered properly. Now, if you're wearing a nightgown, so if you're the type that sleeps so neatly under the blanket that when you wake up, your legs are under the blanket, so a nightgown is good. But if you're those type that by the time you wake up, your legs are spread out like that, undressed, it's more tznius for you to wear pants under that nightgown, because your husband for sure shouldn't be seeing your legs. You do not need to go to sleep with socks, because in a normal situation, your husband is not going to look for your toes in the middle of the night. Yes, your tichel has to be on straight. So if he wakes up with a nightmare, he'll say, my wife, I'm having a nightmare. Your tichel is on straight, your neck, Okay. About wearing pajamas. Yes, the better way is that, of course, the shirt, that's the top half of the pajamas, cover your knees. Cover past your knees, and then you wear the pants underneath if your Rav says it's okay or it's good to wear pants like that. There are those Chabad Rabbanim that permit even that the shirt, now don't go down a level of tznius just because I'm here telling you the truth. But I must say that there are those Chabad Rabbanim that will allow you to wear pajamas that not necessarily does the shirt have to come all the way to the knees, as long as the pants that you wear underneath are baggy pants. That means your husband cannot see the shape of your leg. It's not tight. It's not like leggings or anything tight. I don't think you have to wear a clown suit. I don't think it has to be so loose, but it needs to be not tight. There are those that allow it, but please do not downgrade your level of tznius of your night clothes just because I gave you this piece of information. But if you are wearing pajamas, at least do it right. Now, let's go back. So in that group of college, I asked that, so there was a whole debate. We're talking about night clothes, and then I did not know that there are those Rabbanim that would allow a shorter shirt. So we were talking about the importance of having the shirt go past the knee. And they were hemming and hawing how that's going to work. There was a whole debate about it. The next lesson, I still remember, one of them comes back and they said, I made a hachlata. I'm going to get married. We have to upgrade our tznius. I'm going to get tzniusdik night clothes. And she gave a list of websites, soft surroundings, Land's End. Then, all these different, that the shirts come past the knees, and she passed it around. They made a hachlata together. They are going to have tzniusdik night clothes. It was beautiful. 6 months later, one of those kalas that wasn't called me, and she goes, Mrs. Morozov, you did a little disservice to us. What did I do? You didn't emphasize how the whole foundation of romance is tznius and night clothes. When I crawl into bed and I'm totally tznius for those 2 weeks, for those 12 days, I don't need anything more when I come home from the mikveh. That, if you're covered properly, then when you come home, you don't need anything fancy. You don't need anything different. That's what it's all about. I said, okay, I'll emphasize it with even greater. But I said, you know something? I usually don't like when college share information. But this, I said, you share it with your friends. Because the way you say it, it sounds so much more exciting than if I would say. They would take it from you much better. Why am I telling you this? Because yes, the way you go to sleep at night makes such a difference. Now, you never go to sleep, and even when you're awake, a woman should always be dressed with dignity. You're a woman. You're a wife. You're not a gypsy. So even the night clothes, the day clothes, whatever you wear should be with dignity. When you're nursing your baby, even though it may come a certain time in your life that you almost feel like it's functional, like you're breastfeeding, but your chest needs to be covered properly. Now they have all these fancy nursing aprons and nursing bibs and nursing this and nursing that. You could get yourself that. You could be tznius. Also through a mirror, he shouldn't see you undressed even in a mirror. I just want to say something else because I made this whole big deal about being tznius in front of other people, other men, not just when your husband, when you're nida, in front of other men or in front of other people, especially men, when you're tahar, but really tznius is in front of the Eibishter. Okay? In the beginning of Shulchan Aruch, it says, when it talks about getting dressed, that the Eibishter, Hatznei lechas is ima lokecha. We are tznius because we're always aware of Hashem's presence, especially Chassidim. V'ini Hashem nitzav olav, that's our way of life. We're always dressed in tznius because Hashem is always present. It doesn't matter if it's dark or light or wherever it is, except of course if you have to take a shower, you have to get, things like that. But we're always dressed in a tzniustic fashion. So that is the end of the dinim of Dinei Harchokos. I kept this class short. I hope to the point. And if there's any questions, except for is this a siman heker, is that a siman heker, please ask your own Rav. Other questions I'll be happy to include now. And as you're passing up your questions, I will ask Mr. Shmueli, are you ready to make the announcements? Okay.
We will take this moment to put in our request. And we ask the Rebbe to b'schus this class and the others that he should grant us. At this time, please do your own tefillah. That he should grant us everything that we need. Hatzlacha, gezun, parnasa, nachas. And we should all have mazel in whatever we do, and we should be and we should always meet each other in simchas and always be able to share good tidings and good news always. And of course, Mashiach now. And we'll take just a minute for everyone to finish off, and then we'll say Amen. We'll just wait a half a minute. Okay, v'noimar Amen. So we'll say it together. Amen.
If the night table touches both beds, is that a problem? That it connects them. It will be a problem if it's a night table that's movable. Or let's say you have a baby's bassinet, and if you move, it would move the crib or the bassinet. That would be a problem. But if it's a night table that it's not movable, it's not connected to the other bed, it's just there. If you move one bed, would the other bed move with it? If you move the bed, the other bed wouldn't move with it, so they're not connected. They're not connected. If he asks you if you ate from something, can you tell him no, even if you really did? Well, that's a lie. Never lie. He should be smart and not to ask. If he doesn't know, if he thinks he's buying leftovers, I guess, I don't know if he has to ask. But if it's only two of you, and one of you ate the yogurt, and he knows it's not him,
who else would it be? But once you have children or you're feeding yogurt to a baby, then obviously it's a different story. My daughter wants to know why she needs to be tzniusdik at home when there's no other men. So you open up a Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, and in Siman Gimel, Seif Aleph, it says as follows: Hatzmei v'chastinu lekecha. It's the dinim of getting dressed. It says din v'rishas begadim. Hatzmei v'chastinu lekecha. Ayid tzniusdik in the presence of the Eibishter. And in that Seif it says, even in a bedroom, even in the innermost chambers, dressing and undressing for male and female should be in a way that your nakedness is not exposed, because kachashecha ka'ayra, dark and light, is the same in front of the Eibishter, and the Eibishter is always around. The exception is bathing, swimming, and so on and so forth. And even that, you should be undressed, the minimum that needs to get the job done. That is the proper way of a yid. That's number one. We're in the presence of the Eibishter. So if we upgrade our feeling that we're in the presence of the Eibishter, we will naturally walk around the way the Eibishter would feel dignified that way. There's another thing you could tell her, ask her, there's a costume and there's a uniform. If I would come in here with a gown and a sun hat, I'm tzniusdik. Everything is covered. But I'm wearing a costume because it's not me. It doesn't represent who I am right now, and it's not Purim. So the same thing, the clothing that the Eibishter gave for males and for females is representative of who we really are. We carry an neshama inside of us. So how do we walk around if we're carrying such kedusha? How do we present ourselves? So we dress with what's a uniform to our neshama, not with a costume. The difference is a policeman or a doctor wear their uniform when they're on duty, and then they change into whatever. Yidden, 24/7, we're on duty, so we're always wearing our uniform. In a pool area, the halacha says specifically that the exception to being dressed is in the pool area, except we get dressed and undressed as close as possible to the pool as we need to. Okay, so that's the answer to that question. If you never eat out of your husband's plate, do you still need a siman heker? Yes, the halacha is when a yid sits down to eat with his wife, he puts down the siman heker. Keeping dinei harchokos in public when not needed, does it apply in front of one's children? And does it matter the age of the children? Ask your Rav how you should conduct yourself in your particular situation. If there's a suit jacket hanging on the chair and you are passing by while your husband is sitting on the chair, is it okay if you touch the suit jacket? I assume he's not wearing the suit jacket, because if he's wearing the suit jacket, you're not allowed to touch his garment that he's wearing. If he's not wearing it and you pass by and you touch the jacket, because he's not dressed in it, there's no way he could feel that touch. It's not a problem. If he would feel it because it swings when you pass by the arm of the jacket and it swings into him and it touches him, that could be a shayla. What parts of the hair should be covered? If you're Chabad, your entire hair is covered. And your entire hair is covered. Like the Rebbe mentioned more than one time, that the importance of a woman covering her hair, the school that comes along with it. There was a woman, her name was Kimchis, and she was Zoiche that all of her 7 children had the schus of entering the Kodesh HaKodashim. Not that Chas v'Shalom they died and the next one had to take over, but sometimes the Kohen Gadol could break a leg or get tummy last minute, so he had to have a substitute. So during the course of their lifetime, every one of these 7 sons had the schus of entering the Kodesh HaKodashim. And she was asked, how did you merit to have such righteous children? You know what she answered? It's very interesting. They didn't ask Rabbi Kimchis, what yeshivas did your children go to? How much Gemara did they study by heart? How much miftzorim did they do? What was their greatness attributed to? She said, that means my hair, the beams and the walls and the ceilings of my house never saw a strand of my hair. That means she was so meticulous with her hair covering. And like the Rebbe said, even if her husband wasn't around or no men were around, it was purely in the presence of the Eibishter. 9 months before these children were born, her hair was covered. And the result was 25 years later, decades later, they were Kohanim Gedolim. That means it's something so powerful about a woman's hair being covered. And the gift the Rebbe gave us was to understand and appreciate the segula. There's no guarantees, but there's a segula of a woman keeping her hair covered, and not just her hair. Kimchis, it wasn't just her hair that was covered. The rest of her was also covered. I read someplace, I don't remember where, I cannot give you a source, but I remember reading, I think it's from a Yerushalmi, that even her heels, like the bottom of her dress, was never lifted, that her feet were exposed. And I don't remember where I saw this, but I remember from someplace, I don't think I would make up such a story, but I don't know the source, that when she took a haircut, she would have maids standing around her to make like a machitza. She shouldn't just be standing there with her hair uncovered. That's how careful she was. And here she was zeicher that she had such outstanding children. And the Rebbe connects kimchas and tznius with, what's a kohen gadol? A woman will say, I don't need Kohanim Gedolim. I can have regular Jews. I don't need such special children. So first of all, the Rebbe said, if a woman knows that she can create something better, it's her natural instinct, and she'll do anything in the world that her children will be of a higher stature. It's not just a school for children, it's also that her husband should stand above the rest. And wealth, there's other brachos that are included with meticulous hair covering. But then the Rebbe says another thing, that a kohen gadol wasn't just a Yerushalayim. A kohen gadol had to be healthy, he wasn't allowed to have a mum. He had to be brilliant, he had to be handsome and wealthy. There's a lot of things that are included in this bracha, not just the ruchnis of it. And then in somewhere else, the Rebbe mentions about tznius and about also kimchas and tznius, not just of the hair, that the Kohanim Gedolim, they entered the Kodesh Gedashim. Every other avodah in the Beis Hamikdash, a regular kohen could do. A regular kohen could do, the menorah could do, the Taharas could do, whatever it takes. Just entering the Kodesh Gedashim was the only thing that only a kohen gadol could do. The Kodesh Gedashim is where the luchos are engraved in stone. The word of God is engraved in stone. It's not like a Sefer Torah where the ink could fall off the parchment, could be scratched off. And this is what it means when a woman is tznius and she covers her hair and the rest of her properly, she's investing in the Yerushalayim of her children, that the word of God is engraved in their hearts. How do you guarantee that you're going to have frum children? Who wants children as frum as you or more than you? Everybody does. How do you make that happen? Of course, everything has to do with the love and the attention and the education, and all that stuff. Bottom line is you need siyata d'shmaya. And this is the skula. Dressing tznius, including the hair and everywhere else, is a skula. You're giving your children that head start of Yerushalayim. This is the biggest gift you could give your children. So what parts of the hair should be covered? All of the parts of the hair should be covered, except one exception. That the side hairs, that's the payas, that are not the payas, just the payas from the side of the ears. If it's only in front of your husband, the payas are allowed to show, even if you're nida. But if other men are around, even the payas have to be covered. Okay? If you have facial hair, you have hair behind your neck, or other facial hair, where does the scalp end and where does your neck begin, or things like that, you ask your own Rav if there's any extra hair that you have that is not part of your scalp or your head. I hope that there's a few questions about the hair. I hope it was answered. If you need more, you can ask your Rav. If you're wearing pajama pants, kosher pajama pants when you need them, it's not in front of other men. The exception is only in front of your husband. Again, if there's other people around the table, you should put down a siman heker. There are those that say you may not need to if there's an adult sitting between both of you and there's no way you could come to share the food. So ask your Rav about that. If you're not eating, you're only listening, and he's eating, you don't need a siman heker. If both of you are eating, then you need a siman heker. She'll make the announcements, and I guess the stories will be for another time. 1 minute. There's just one more question. Okay, no. Okay, girls, hatzlacha. Netilas Yadayim, it's better not to prepare for the water for him to do Netilas Yadayim. There are those that allow it, there are those that are machmir. An entire tea you cannot prepare for your husband if it's in his presence. But if it's in the kitchen, you can prepare the entire tea. When you bring it to him in the dining room, you don't put it directly in front of him, you put it to the side or with your left hand. About him preparing for you a drink, most Rabbanim will say the same rules apply for the husband and for the wife.
First of all, in reference to the discussion that came up, that Sarah brought up with her story about how medical staff treats frum couples during labor and delivery, you might be interested to know that one of the shluchos sent us a very lovely her talk that she gave in front of an entire medical staff and a hospital of her community, so that the medical staff should understand what they're dealing with frum couples. And we transcribed that into a lovely article. It's on mikveh.org. It's Childbirth for the Observant Couple. So you may want to read it, print it out. Any of the shluchos out there listening, if you'd like to read the article, print it out for your own use, you are welcome to. And the name of the shlucha, of course, is on the article. You can contact her for further details. Well, we spent the last 6 weeks getting together and learning. And I would like to say, first of all, thanks to Rabbi and Mrs. Moshe Rabashkin for opening their home to us. Very graciously. I'd like to thank Junior Sheikh Chabad, Beis Shmuel, the new Mikveh Mein Chayimushka of Crown Heights, Oihel Nosson, Beis Rivka Head Start and Early Head Start, and of course, the wonderful people at JLI Torah Cafe. None of it was on there? It was on there. Okay. There's nothing clipped. Oh. Okay. JLI for doing the filming so that and creating this live feed so that all of you out there across the world can share and join with us. It's also JLI who we have to thank for. We also would like to thank a wonderful group of ladies who have given of their time in organizing the event, in working with mikveh.org to arrange everything, to arrange for refreshments, schlepping, going back and forth, coming early to set up, staying late to clean up. And they are Mrs. Leah Goldberg, Mrs. Mary Farrow, Mrs. Mimi Wiesner, Mrs. Esther Lane. We'd like to thank our chair ladies, Mrs. Esti Mierchik and Mrs. Razel Shmueli. And certainly our speakers, Rabbi Rafal Aaron from Australia, Mrs. Esther Pekarsky, and last but certainly not least, our own Mrs. Sarah Marazov. Sarah has gone above and beyond to question, to answer, and to teach. And it's greatly appreciated. Also, the Rav of our Meiser, Rav Shalom Ber Chaikin of Cleveland, we thank him. He has tuned in each week to each session to observe, to be available for questions. He has gone over each session afterwards, clarifying and making any additions so that everyone viewing it will have sources and clear comments and notations to clarify anything that might be misconstrued or might not be explained clear enough just in regular wording. We thank all of you, and we thank all of you for tuning in. Again, these sessions will be available on mikveh.org in their entirety. Once they're all completed, we hope to eventually have them available for sale as well on DVD. And we ask all of you, whether you've joined us now or whether you will join us in the future by viewing them on mikveh.org, to make it a point to review these halachas at least once a year with your husbands, together, separately, however you want to do it, but it is very important for you to make a point to review these halachas carefully at least once a year, and certainly after a pregnancy and having a baby and not having to use them for very long. We thank you all for coming and attending and being here. Good night.